Somewhere in a storage drawer at a small English museum sits a fist-sized lump of bronze that has embarrassed some of the smartest archaeologists alive. It is 12-sided. It is hollow. Every face has a circular hole cut into it, and every hole is a different size. 20 small knobs sit at its corners like tiny doorknobs on a cage that leads nowhere. It looks like a toy or maybe a prop from a fantasy film. It is neither. It is Roman. It is real. And after more than 300 years of people finding these things in the ground, nobody, not one archaeologist, not one historian, not one metallurgist, can tell you with certainty what it was for. That sentence alone should stop you. We know what a Roman soldier's sandal was for. We know what a Roman surgeon's scalpel was for. We know the recipe for Roman concrete well enough to argue about whether it's better than ours. The Romans left behind tax records, love letters, graffiti insulting the emperor, and technical manuals on how to build a bridge across a river in enemy territory. This was not a secretive civilization. It was a civilization obsessed with writing things down. And yet, out of everything they wrote, not one surviving sentence explains this object. In the summer of 2023, a volunteer archaeology group in the English village of Norton Disney, Lincolnshire, found one of the finest examples ever recovered. What happened next, the excavation, the analysis, and the honest, still unresolved debate among the archaeologists who studied it, is a much stranger and more interesting story than any manufactured lab bombshell. The real mystery doesn't need embellishing. It's already one of the best unsolved puzzles in European archaeology. The Norton Disney History and Archaeology Group is not a team of university professors with unlimited funding. It's a community group, volunteers, local history enthusiasts, people who give up their weekends to dig test trenches in a farmer's field near the old Fossway, the Roman road that once ran from Exeter to Lincoln. In June 2023, working alongside professional archaeologists from Allen Archaeology, they were investigating a suspected Roman settlement near a villa that had first been excavated back in the 1930s. The dig was almost over. 3 trenches had already been opened and closed. On the second-to-last day in the 4th and final trench, a volunteer named Richard Watts was clearing what looked like an old refuse pit, a place where Roman inhabitants had once dumped broken pottery and building debris, when he uncovered something that clearly wasn't rubbish. A dodecahedron sitting near the top of the fill, remarkably intact. It was too late in the season to fully excavate the context. The team had to close the trench and wait almost a full year, returning in 2024 to properly understand exactly how and where the object had come to rest. That's real archaeology. Slow, patient, often anticlimactic. There was no dramatic sealed burial chamber, no ceremonial pit lined with human ash. It came out of a Roman-era pit that also held ordinary domestic debris, which is itself an interesting clue, and one many retellings of this story conveniently leave out because it doesn't fit a spookier narrative. Around 130 Roman dodecahedra have been found across the old northwestern provinces of the empire: Britain, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Hungary, Luxembourg. Not one has ever turned up in Italy, the Roman heartland. Not one has ever turned up in Spain, Egypt, Greece, or the eastern Mediterranean provinces where Roman civilization was, if anything, even more literate and well-documented. Every single known example belongs to the empire's northwestern frontier. The Norton Disney specimen stood out immediately for a different reason: its condition. At roughly 8 centimeters tall and weighing 245 grams, it is one of the largest dodecahedra ever recovered. And unlike most of the roughly 30 other examples found in Britain, many of which are damaged, crushed, or fragmentary, this one came out of the ground essentially whole. No cracks. No missing knobs. A beautifully cast, high-quality piece of metalwork that had survived nearly 2,000 years underground, almost untouched. Archaeometallurgist Jerry McDonnell ran an XRF analysis on the object, a technique that identifies the elemental composition of metal without damaging it. The results showed a copper alloy, roughly 75% copper, 7% tin, and an unusually high 18% lead. That high lead content is genuinely interesting, because lead lowers the melting point of an alloy and makes it flow more smoothly into intricate molds. Whoever cast this object needed the metal to fill every corner of a genuinely complicated shape, the hollow body, the 20 corner knobs, the 12 unevenly sized holes, and they adjusted their alloy specifically to make that possible. This wasn't an amateur casting. It took real metallurgical know-how and a real investment of expensive material to make. The instinct, when you first see a dodecahedron, is to assume it must be a tool. 12-sided objects with graduated holes look like they belong in a toolbox or a laboratory. Over the past 3 centuries, researchers have proposed dozens of practical explanations, and almost every one collapses under a little scrutiny. A candlestick holder was an early favorite, since wax residue has occasionally been detected on a handful of specimens. But the design fights the function. An object open on all 12 faces can't hold a pool of melted wax in place, and there's no consistent soot staining or heat discoloration on the surviving examples that regular use as a lamp would leave behind. The wax traces are just as easily explained by centuries of contact with waxy substances in the soil. A surveying or range-finding instrument sounds appealing to modern minds trained to see measurement in every geometric object. But it doesn't survive contact with the evidence either. No 2 dodecahedra share the same dimensions. The 12 holes on a single specimen vary in diameter, without any consistent ratio between them. There are no scale markings, no sighting notches, no alignment features. And crucially, the Romans already had a perfectly good surveying tool, the groma, a simple cross. Staff with plumb lines, which is well documented in Roman texts, depicted in Roman art, and even found buried in surveyors' graves. If the dodecahedron served a comparable technical purpose, it's strange that the empire's actual surveying instrument left an obvious paper trail, and this one left none at all. A knitting or glove-making tool is a more recent and more popular theory, partly because someone demonstrated on social media that you can, in fact, knit a small tube using the object's knobs. It's a fun demonstration, but it doesn't hold up as an explanation for the original purpose. Roman textile production in this period relied primarily on single-needle nail binding rather than multi-point knitting, and none of the recovered dodecahedra show the wear patterns, polish, or fiber residue you'd expect from repeated use as a textile tool. A coin gauge, a candlestick, a dice, a fishing net weight, a ceremonial scepter head, a child's toy, each has been proposed, and each runs into the same wall. Nothing about the object is standardized the way a functional tool would need to be, and nothing about its distribution or condition matches how a common household or military implement would circulate and wear out. Here's the part a lot of viral retellings skip, because it's less exciting than a cover-up. The archaeologists who have actually handled these objects are refreshingly upfront about the fact that they don't know. Richard Parker, secretary of the Norton Disney History and Archaeology Group, has said plainly that despite everything the group has learned about their find and the dozens of others like it, they are no closer to a definitive answer about its function. That's not evasion. That's what honest scholarship looks like, when the evidence genuinely doesn't point to a single clear conclusion. What most specialists agree on is more modest, and in some ways more interesting than any single answer could be. The current leading interpretation is that dodecahedra were not everyday practical tools at all, but objects tied to ritual, religious, or symbolic practice in the Romano-Celtic frontier zones where they're found, a region where local pre-Roman traditions continued to blend with imported Roman religion for centuries after conquest. The fact that they're expensive, geometrically striking, and consistently found in the northwestern provinces rather than the Roman heartland fits a picture of a regionally specific practice, possibly connected to a cult, a guild, or a set of beliefs that simply never made it into the literary record the way military engineering or imperial administration did. It's worth remembering that absence from Roman texts isn't automatically evidence of a conspiracy. The surviving body of Roman literature is a tiny, accidental fraction of everything that was ever written, filtered through what medieval scribes chose to copy and what happened to survive fire, flood, and time. Plenty of ordinary Roman objects and practices, regional folk customs, provincial craft traditions, local religious paraphernalia, never made it into the works of Vitruvius or Pliny the Elder, not because they were forbidden, but because those authors were writing for an educated Roman audience with entirely different interests. a frontier object used by a Gallic or British community, whether religious, social, or even just decorative and status signaling, had no obvious reason to appear in a Roman engineering manual in the first place. The clustering of every known dodecahedron along the empire's northwestern frontier is real, well documented, and genuinely worth paying attention to. You don't need to invent lab results to make it compelling. Gaul, Britain, the Rhineland, the Alpine provinces. This is precisely the zone where Roman administrative and military control overlaid a deep substrate of pre-existing Celtic and Germanic culture. It's a region where we know, from Roman writers like Julius Caesar and Tacitus, that local religious specialists, Druids among them, continued to hold influence long after conquest, sometimes tolerated, sometimes actively suppressed, as in the well-documented Roman campaign against the Druidic center on Anglesey in the 1st century AD. That context makes a ritual or symbolic explanation plausible, without requiring any dramatic secret. A distinctive, expensive, geometrically unusual object, concentrated specifically in a region with strong local religious traditions distinct from Roman state religion, and completely unmentioned by Roman authors writing for a Mediterranean audience, is exactly the pattern you'd expect from a regional practice that mattered enormously to the people who made and used it, and meant nothing at all to the writers whose books happened to survive. Some archaeologists have also pointed out something more mundane, but equally important. Dodecahedra are frequently found alongside coin hoards, near settlements, and in refused contexts, not exclusively in dramatic ritual settings. Some may have functioned as status objects, displays of wealth and craftsmanship not unlike an elaborately worked piece of jewelry today, valuable enough to be deliberately deposited as a kind of offering or savings, the way coin hoards were. Not every unexplained object needs a single grand unifying theory. It's entirely possible that different dodecahedra, found in different contexts across 4 centuries and a dozen provinces, served more than one purpose. There's a temptation, when a real mystery doesn't come with a tidy answer, to manufacture one, a secret lab report, a suppressed manuscript, a museum cover-up. It makes for a punchier video. But it also does something quietly disrespectful to the actual archaeologists who spend their weekends on their knees in cold English mud for no pay, carefully documenting a find precisely, so that future researchers, with better tools than we have today, might eventually solve it honestly. The real story of the Norton Disney dodecahedron is not that the truth was hidden and finally uncovered. It's that a community group of amateur enthusiasts working with professional archaeologists on a shoestring budget found one of the finest examples of an object that has genuinely puzzled scholars since the first dodecahedron turned up in the 18th century. And instead of pretending to have solved it, they put it